Today I will introduce you to automatic train operations on the Cumberland West Model Railroad. Your first reaction might be, why do this? The reason is essentially the same reason why we want to hold operating sessions at all. The goal of most operating sessions is to demonstrate a model railroad as if it were a real railroad and a part of a transportation system. Crew members enjoy participating in an op session as if they were performing a job on a real railroad. The layout is the stage and the crew is the actors.
Viaduct, clear first 97 extra 192 west, route him Evetts Yard west switch to West Main, continue clear viaduct to Narrows, clear number 22 to Virginia Avenue.
Model railroad clubs and museums have a unique problem. These organizations often are perceived to occupy valuable real estate, and it is. Many, if not most, of these organizations do not own the venue in which the layout resides. Paying market rate rent is often not possible for a model railroad club. Even benevolent landlords are pressured to take the layout space and make it of more benefit to the visiting public. One of the problems is that these public visitors often do not mix well with operating sessions. The result is that most clubs and museums hold open houses in which the trains just run continuously, but without the type of interaction and pageantry that we would like to have. Venues like schools, parks, municipalities, larger museums, and other organizations have existing public responsibilities. Nationally, in the last decade, about 20 to 25% of model railroad clubs and museums have lost their venue. The predominant issue is better stewardship of space. One example of responding to this requirement is the Colorado Model Railroad Museum in Greeley, Colorado. Their plan blends automated and docent-driven trains for the enjoyment of the museum visitors. Running trains on a large layout continuously open to the public is a daunting process. Running the trains imitating a prototype operation is even more difficult. The magic ingredient is software. There are more than a dozen comprehensive software programs designed for automated train running. Some of these alternatives are the Train Controller, Train Brain, Model Railroad Automation, iTrain, Randall Train Automation, Rockrail, and of course the JMRI alternatives, Dispatcher and Warrants. There are also several others. Some of the programs can operate on very elementary computers such as an Arduino or Raspberry Pi, which are really just computers on a card. The free open source or collaborative systems often have more power and are sometimes linked to other automation capabilities. This is certainly true of the JMRI options. On the other hand, the commercial products such as Train Controller are often much more stable and are subjected to more focused internal management. Some of these software systems tightly couple the train to a layout display, while in others the layout display is partially or completely independent of the automated train control. Most of us are already familiar with JMRI, which has two automated train options, Dispatcher and Warrants. Automated trains require definitions. Most train automation systems have three elements that need to be defined. The first three, trains, location, and routes, are essential. Schedule support for multiple trains is an optional feature, but not found in all the systems. This presentation is limited to the JMRI warrant system. This is the software my layout currently uses and I am also most familiar with. This software records or generates a train command file called the warrant. The warrant, when played back, executes a series of DCC commands that drive the train over the prescribed route. In its basic form, the train is defined by assigning the DCC ID. In GMRI, this can be as simple as referencing your existing decoder roster. The roster already contains the information necessary to control the train using a DCC system. Location is a block, a track element, or a group of track elements with an occupancy sensor. We need to know when a block is occupied with a train. The block can be multiple tracks and turnouts, such as an interlocking plant, but with a single sensor. Only one train may occupy a block at one time. Warrant terminology calls them occupancy blocks. Next, we add a sensor name and the length of the block. The block length assists the GMRI warrant in computing the necessary speed profile over the route. Speed changes respond to block speeds, signal indications, and route occupancy intrusions by other trains. There can be multiple pathways we need to specify the connecting blocks. In warrants, the block connections are called portals. Finally, we must specify the allowed pathways that transit the block using these portals. Warrants calls these mini routes paths. Each of the software systems has a variety of terminology for the same concept. This makes it difficult to work with multiple systems at the same time. At present, there are no terminology standards. Now that we have our blocks, portals, and paths defined, there is one more element. If we allow the warrant to establish the route by throwing turnouts, the turnouts must be associated with the path. However, it is not always desirable to have the warrant throw the turnouts too far in advance of the train. Another train down the line might need to use the same turnout. If a train has multiple optional routes, the routes must be changed during execution. The warrant is terminated and a new warrant started that contains the new alternate route segments. Now that we have specified the beginning and end of the automated train's run, we need to connect the blocks together to form the train's route. One way of doing this is to record an actual train crew running the train. The system will assemble the script, which will allow us to repeatedly run this exact same route. The system records our crew-driven DCC commands, controlling lights, sounds, or other activity. As the train passes into each new block, the transit time and passage between blocks are chained together to form the chain route. The warrant can then be displayed as a series of actions and modified as required. The warrant system allows user modifications to the speed and function commands. In addition to DCC commands to the train, the warrant can input and output sensors to communicate with external logic. Each warrant line has a timestamp to control when something happens. The timestamps are offsets from the time of entering a block. If an automated train arrives earlier or later than the original recording, its functions and speed actions are resynchronized to the actual location. The more blocks you have defined, the better the correction of the actual train location and the real-time performance. The running performance of the automated train is further modified by the presence of an occupied block further down in its routes, or signal indications. If the layout has signals, this is another way of communicating to the train that it should stop or modify its speed. Signals can be virtual and used only to communicate with the auto-running train. No real signal has to exist. Signal logic that you have defined elsewhere in your JMRI layout definition is not automatically carried forward into your automatic trains. The signals which you wish to be a part of the warrant control system must be added to the table of signals in the block or O-block definitions. Layout block boundaries generally conform to the pattern of the prototype. Rail gaps and related occupancy sensors determine the block boundaries. We often need a precise location for stopping. The stopping blocks are typically 15 inches long. This allows for a more precise location of the train as it approaches the end of a block. Infrared sensors are another option for establishing a precise point for emergency stopping. The fourth optional train automation element, schedule, supports several automated trains running in a predefined sequence. JMRI does not have a built-in schedule definition. Therefore, we have implemented train scheduling using JMRI's extensive logic capabilities. When I refer to JMRI logic, I use this term in its generality. JMRI logic's support includes some subsystems such as logic, Logix-NG, L-roots, sensor groups, multisensor, and other logic-related features. In JMRI, there are usually several different options for adding the same logical function. Confusing, I'll admit, but extremely powerful and versatile. To create a warrant, we must first establish a route. As a minimum, we need to specify the warrant's beginning and ending blocks. These block names can be filled in by typing or by clicking on the blocks of a layout diagram. Additional blocks can be specified that either must be included or must be avoided in transit. The directional and path characteristics of the beginning and ending blocks are displayed. If there are multiple options, we need to specify the desired block transitions. This process generates one or more optional warrants which meet the selected routing criteria. After selecting the desired route, it can be either run or displayed. The selected warrant can be allocated to show the selected route on the layout plan. If the route is as desired, the warrant can be saved. If the block paths we defined have turnouts listed, these turnouts will be thrown when the warrant determines that doing so will not interfere with another train. All the various automated train systems have some variation of what has just been discussed. One of the things we have discovered is that human crew running a train to create a warrant make many small unnoticed mistakes. The warrant then records these mistakes. An automated train running the warrant may react to the unintended mistake and proceed on faulty information. As expected, it is easier to run with only automated trains than mixing automated trains with crew-served jobs. A user-created Excel file contains all the warrants that a train is likely to need. The restrictions or crew options required by each warrant are also in this external file. A matrix of automation illustrates the various levels of complexity when crew and automation jobs are mixed. Each level of automation introduces new complexities. The first level is automated train hostling. We have used automated train hostling on my layout for more than a decade. A single staging area with 2 levels has a maximum capacity of 70 trains. These trains can be directed to arrive at the visible layout on one of 4 different locations on the B&O, and 3 more if the Western Maryland Railroad is also operating. Originally, the stage management function was performed by a stage manager crew position. There are many opportunities to make an error. Even experienced stage managers make mistakes in routing trains, and the train would often appear at the wrong portal on the visible railroad. Frequent errors occurred even with the assistance of route-selected turnouts and throat crossovers. Today on the Cumberland West Railroad, automatic train hostling uses JMRI warrants for bringing trains from staging storage to the visible layout. Once on the visible layout, the train is controlled without any further automation. Human crews fill all the layout functions. When automated hostling, the level of errors drops to almost 0 and trains appear when and where they're supposed to. The next level of automation is automated road trains. These trains go from place to place on visible layout under automatic control. The only crew position is the train manager, who supervises the automated warrants, and there is no human crew on the layout. The train manager may start the trains guided by a schedule or automatically using a table of trains. The trains may interact with each other, but not with the crew. These train-to-train interactions are primarily competing for shared resources at junctions or yards. Additional complexity is added if we add human crew for 1 or more yard jobs. This process is more complex because yard switching can require the train engine to be moved and yard engines to randomly occupy the train block. The original warrant is terminated while the switching is active. When the yard switching is complete, a clearance must be issued. The train now enters the main line and continues to the next stop. We need to be able to dynamically specify that a yard is crewed. The B&O yard automation panel allows each of these 3 B&O yards to be crew-served or automated. If there is a yard crew, clearances are requested using the toggles. The train manager, dispatcher, or automated system can then grant the clearance requests, which allow the trains to re-enter the main line and proceed on its journey. Eventually, we would like to use an automated voice recognition system for requesting and granting clearances. If a train originates at a crewed yard, the train manager or dispatcher must clear the train. If the yard is unmanned and nothing has changed, we know the train ID and location already. Auto running can proceed using the schedule and other characteristics of that train. Adding a yard crew allows more realism, but adds complexity. Crews don't always do what we expected. The next level of automation allows crewed trains intermixed with automated trains on the main line. The train table panel can alter the status of any train. Crewed trains make mistakes. If a crewed train intrudes on an automated train by encroaching on an adjacent block, there's no way for the auto train to know that it's not itself entering that adjacent block without the assistance of Railcom or other positive ID capability. JMRI logic can tell us what train occupies a block if it is under the control of warrants. An external Excel formatted table contains a list of critical decision locations for each route. This table lists what advanced resources will be required that might also be needed by another train. This feature is especially important where there is a mainline junction or complex interlocking. We will shortly see an example of how shared resources are managed in the auto train clearance subsystem. We do not currently allow automated local trains with in-route switching. We have tried several automated train HO couplers, but they have not been reliable enough for unintended operations. Automated couplers for automated trains must be both mechanically reliable and have electrical characteristics compatible with your choice of DCC decoders. Limiting uncoupling to the static locations of fixed uncoupling ramps has not proved to have sufficient flexibility for general use with automated train switching. The final and most complex auto train crew scenario is the tower operator. The problem is that by its very nature, a tower operator has control over all permitted routing. Sending an automated train in the wrong direction can be outside the options for that train. A special recovery warrant must be constructed or the train driven manually to suitable locations within its route. Of course, we can write logic that prevents tower-operated errors. That's called automated tower, and the operator becomes just a cardboard stand-in. The same issue applies to the dispatcher using a CTC panel. One thing we discovered that when we started running automated trains every day, crews, especially tower operators and CTC dispatchers, make a lot of unseen mistakes. Auto trains are not forgiving. In addition to the yard clearance panel, there are a number of other panels that assist in the management of an automated train schedule. The train list panel shows all the trains that are available, and it is filled from the external Excel file defined by the user. The train status options are ready, meaning it will run on the schedule. Standby, it is at a yard or otherwise waiting for a new warrant or crew. Running, it will run autonomously and is doing so now. Complete, the run has run autonomously and it's over. And cancel, this takes the train out of the schedule and causes it not to run. Overriding the train status options, a train can be designated to run immediately, disregarding the timetable. The train list panel allows the real-time changing of the train status, such as from ready to run immediate or cancel. In the run immediate option, the train disregards the timetable criteria and the train launches in automatic mode. Any changes to the train running schedule also change the manner in which trains may interact and share layout resources. Therefore, the system of shared resources has to be dynamic and take real-time schedule changes into account. The Master Control Panel configures the various workstations' layout responsibility. Any layout computer can be configured to perform any of the tasks from towers, dispatcher, commodities manager, or any other positions. This panel allows JMRI to perform any train control or crew job function on any computer. In its basic form, most auto train systems go from place to place, throwing turnouts as required to establish or maintain the route. The system I'm describing can handle more complicated circumstances. Here are a few complex auto train examples. In the Cumberland area, the B&O Railroad route is determined by tower-controlled interlocking plants. If the tower is crewed, the train's route is determined by dispatcher order to the tower operators. On the Cumberland West layout, all interlocking logic is computer resident. Therefore, the logic of an unmanned tower needs to know what trains are arriving and their required route. Signals must be set to protect the train traveling through the interlocking. Our first example is Grafton Coal 1, a coal drag coming over the mountains from the mines. A warrant takes the train from staging to Terra Alta as it enters the visible layout. In our demonstration, there is no assigned crew, so the train proceeds to Kaiser Yard and stops on the eastbound arrival track. Here the yard crew will reconfigure the train for its relatively low-grade trip to the East Coast. During its automated journey, it travels a 20-track complex staging throat and 5 different interlocking plants. Each of these interlockings require the train to request the reservation of a shared resource in order to proceed. Resource requests can be added to the warrant or automatically inferred from the train's route and progress. When the coal train is ready, Kaiser Yard requests a clearance through the McKenzie interlocking for the train to re-enter the main line and proceed east. If the resources are available, the dispatcher, whether automated or crewed, then would grant a clearance to the train so that it can resume its journey with a new warrant. In this example, the clearance is not granted because another train already controls the necessary resources. While the eastbound coal train is busy at Kaiser, an empty hopper train, BRH-1, arrives from Brunswick staging over the Patterson cutoff into the visible layout at McKenzie. It continues to the Kaiser westbound arrival track to be reconfigured for its trip to the mountains. Both the coal and hopper trains reserved resources during their trips. These reservations were displayed on the Tower Auto Train status panel. A yellow light indicates a request, a green light, a clearance. The class or priority of a train can determine how far in advance the clearance is granted. Once a clearance is granted, the route turnouts are thrown and the signal set. Each tower interlocking panel shows the current resource requests. While the yard crew works the coal and hopper trains, BO-24, the eastbound West Virginian passenger train, comes onto the layout and makes its first stop at Terra Alta Station. After a further stop at Oakland, it runs down 17-mile grade and stops at Kaiser Station. As a first-class train, its warrant captured all the resources necessary to reach Kaiser. BO-24 approaches the Kaiser Station and requests an immediate clearance to proceed eastward after its stop. The eastbound coal train is subordinate to BO-24. Its request to depart Kaiser Yard and occupy McKenzie is denied. Today, BO-24 faces no conflicts and it departs. Once it clears the McKenzie interlocking, the tower automatically clears the eastbound coal train through the interlocking to staging. Let's now look at 2 trains requiring the same interlocking element at Viaduct Tower. The eastbound RDC Speedliner has traveled from staging to Heinemann. Just before entering the layout, the train requests a route from the Pittsburgh Division's eastbound main through the viaduct interlocking to the middle station track at Cumberland. It won't request further clearance until completing its station stop. At the same time, BO94, the eastbound Baltimore time saver, is speeding toward the viaduct interlocking and requests a clearance to the eastbound main at Cumberland before heading to Evetts Yard. The automatic tower refuses this request and drops a red signal to stop the train at viaduct. After the speedliner has safely cleared the interlocking, Viaduct Tower issues a clearance to the time saver. In turn, it asks for clearance through the next interlocking at Virginia Street so it can enter the Evetts Yard. Because the yard entrance is occupied, BO94 is stopped at Virginia Street interlocking, with its last few cars still in the viaduct interlocking. BO99, the Pacific time saver, occupying the Evetts Yard arrival and departure track, is ready to depart now. While the speedliner is stopped at Cumberland Station, BO99 requests a clearance to Viaduct Junction on its way west towards Pittsburgh and Chicago. Virginia Street Tower routes BO99 west on the Cumberland Freight bypass track towards Viaduct, avoiding the station tracks. However, the last cars of the Baltimore time saver still occupy the viaduct interlocking. Simultaneously, BO34 departs Cumberland on the eastbound track. BO99 is stopped at the dwarf signal at the west end of the bypass. Now that BO99 has left the west end of Evetts Yard, the Virginia Street Tower automatically clears BO94 to the yard. As BO94's last cars leave the viaduct interlocking, BO99 is now cleared to proceed through viaduct to Pittsburgh. This series of train movements is choreographed by JMRI warrants in our automated routing controls. While these train movements are going on, trains in serial staging are asynchronously repositioned to fill vacant storage locations. If a train is waiting at a portal for a crew and the crew does not show up, the train can be told to proceed to the next stop using a new warrant. This new warrant could have an alternate routing. The Cumberland West layout also contains a Western Maryland Railroad. It has only one tower at MY Junction. It is a single track and uses timetable and train order for operational control. If an alternate track is required for a meet, the train is stopped and a new warrant containing the new route is issued. This system is still in development. We are preparing a package of instructions and GMRI logic samples to enable any model railroad to be enjoyed both as an automated transportation system and with public participation. Pageant running increases the value of the layout to both the serious model railroader and the tourist public.